All right, guys, hopefully we're about to finish these up here, and this one won't take that long. Building on the Renaissance, we've got the Protestant Reformation. The Reformation is going to come about around, 120 or so year period from 1517 to about 1648. And the problem is, as we go through the Renaissance and we have humanism, and we've got Henry VIII creating a new church and Sir Thomas More's Utopia, and we're looking at humanism and we're challenging the church for the first time, is some people in the church, several popes, very corrupt, and several large bishops and archbishops and even abbots of monasteries had forgotten their religious mission, and they were living like kings. Their wealth and their opulence and their lifestyle didn't adhere to strict church conditions. And one of the guys is an old monk named Martin Luther, who went home, and while he was there, he noticed another church official selling an indulgence. An indulgence is like a debit card for sinning. The idea is, when you die and you're pretty good, you don't go to heaven right away, you go to a place called purgatory, kind of like a waiting room. And if you pay money for an indulgence, you can get like a Disney World fast pass and go to the head of the line. Or you can prepay. Here's $100. I now have a sinning debit card. Every sin will take $100, and when it about runs out, I'm going to refill it back up, kind of like a prepaid phone. And Martin Luther is watching this, and some say if you have dead relatives and you're not sure if they're in heaven, pay us and we'll pray for them and we'll get them to heaven. And Martin Luther says, what are you doing? This is wrong. Nowhere in the Bible does it talk about purgatory. You're just trying to make money. So as was the custom of the day, he went down and nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Cathedral. And that's what you did. You didn't use a pseudonym, you didn't use a pen name. You went down and said, I, Martin Luther, think these things are wrong, and he wrote them down, complaining about abuses in the church. He calls people out. Alyssa, Luna, Hannah, all right, Joe. Over here, we've got, let's see, who are we going to talk about in first period? Caitlin, Emily, Anna. Shame on you guys for being terrible. And this really shocks people to their core. He names names. And the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V declare him an outlaw. He is a heretic. He is actually working against the church. And so, unwillingly, just trying to clean up a problem, Martin Luther will create instability within the church and in Europe, especially in the Holy Roman Empire, what we know today as Germany. The 360 German princes thought this was awesome, because while the princes are on their own, they're trying to resist the growing power of Spanish Habsburg Emperor Charles V. He's in Spain, but he's their emperor, and they want to resist him. They don't really like him. They don't want to pay money to Charles V and the church. And so they begin to resist what the Holy Roman Emperor is doing, and they love it when Martin Luther nails his theses to the church, because now the emperor can't focus on them. He's got to fight Martin Luther. And when Martin Luther does this, it inspires, it rallies the people of Germany together, and small riots break out complaining about the abuses in the church. Why are we dirt poor and you guys are living like that? So after several years of this, in 1555, Charles V is forced to sign the Peace of Augsburg. And the Peace of Augsburg pretty much allowed, it said that the 360 German princes could each individually determine the religion in their own kingdom. If you want to be Catholic, like many of the princes in southern Germany did, you can be Catholic. In the northern part of Germany, many of them wanted to be a new religion, Lutheranism, or Protestantism, for protesting the abuses of the church. And here's a map of Germany, 360 states. We don't need to really worry about that right now. Well, Martin Luther's success will inspire another guy named John Calvin. And John Calvin comes up with the idea of predestination. He believes that God already knows where you are going to go. It is predetermined, whether you're going to heaven or hell. But if you try really, really, really hard, maybe you can change that outcome. And so he sets up very small, isolated communities, mainly in Switzerland. And what their job was to isolate themselves, kind of like little Amish communities, to remove themselves from temptation. But it's another breakaway from the Catholic Church. So the Catholic Church, who had this grip on power for decades, is beginning to lose it. And this brings us to King Henry VIII and the Church of England. At this time, Henry VIII is Catholic. And unfortunately for him, and many others, he had to marry his dead brother's wife, a lady named Catherine of Aragon. And he wants to have that marriage annulled. She does not produce an heir. He doesn't really like her. And he wants to have the marriage annulled, which means it never existed. The problem with that is Catherine of Aragon is the brother of powerful Charles V, the Habsburg. We don't want to make Spain angry because they're powerful. And the Pope was a good buddy of Charles V. So how do we annul this marriage without making Catherine of Aragon blackballed forever and without upsetting the Pope? Or upsetting Charles V. So the Pope says no. So Henry VIII says, gosh darn it, I'm going to create my own church. And he has a loyal bishop and all the marriage, and he creates the Anglican Church, or the Church of England, with the king as the head of the church, not the Pope. If you go to an English Anglican church service and a Roman Catholic Mass, they're virtually identical. The difference is who is in charge. In the Anglican Church, it's now the king. It's the royal, no longer the Pope. And this splintering of the church is going to cause fantastic problems. But it wakes up a new generation of religious clergy. And after the fracturing in Germany, problems in England, a new pope will get elected. His name is Pope Paul II, and he wants to put the church back on its original mission, saving souls. So he forms what's known as the Council of Trent, which over a period of years examines. It is very thorough. They root out corrupt individuals, they root out corrupt church members, and they get rid of them. They take the broom, bishops, abbots, nuns who are corrupt, and they sweep them out. Now it's a good idea and it works, but all of a sudden this takes too much traction and people get going, and not only are we going to get rid of corruption, we are going to get rid of anything that is not Catholic, and it leads to the very violent Inquisition, where people, real or imagined, people on the fringe of society, maybe mental illness, maybe sick, maybe just that they were loners, get labeled as heretics and witches. You could be whipped, you could be sent to the dungeon, you could be burned at the stake, because we are eradicating anything that doesn't believe in us. And it leads to destruction of science and literature. If it doesn't agree with the church, or if it questions the church, we have to get rid of it. And the other thing it does is it gives rise to the role of Jesuits, those missionaries who were formed by Ignatius of Loyola, an old military guy. And these are the military Jesuits that I told you about went down into the New World. Sometimes you got to have a missionary who's not afraid to convert by the sword. And they will help spread Catholicism to many parts of the New World that will lead to a new round of warfare in Europe, Catholic versus Protestant. So, some of the things that were destroyed when being questioned were scientific advancements and achievements. And at this time, we've got a bunch of really bright, brilliant guys across the world who are starting to invent things. We have Mr. Johann Kepler and Galileo Galilei. And they are going to build telescopes. And they're going to sit and they're going to look at ancient astrological charts from ancient Egypt and China. And they're going to begin to map the constellations and the movements of the planets. And they figured out, like Aristarchus way back in ancient Greece did, that the Earth orbits the sun. And that the Earth rotates on an axis once every 24 hours. And nobody believed them. They said, you're crazy. The sun orbits around the Earth. And they're like, no, it's not. You can look through our telescope and you can see it. They draw up charts. And no one believes them because the church said, nope, the Earth is the center of the universe. Shortly thereafter that, what university in England, famous Sir Isaac Newton is sitting down thinking about mathematical formulas, and an apple falls on his head. And he uses math. Proven math, finite math, that you can explain things. Gravity can be explained mathematically. There is a logical and a mathematical finite explanation for some of the mysteries of the universe, like gravity. He said, so, well, yes, we understand God is in charge. Some of this, you can prove it scientifically. There it is. Here's the math. And then Francis Bacon comes up with something you guys are familiar with in your biology and your chemistry classes. All right, here's Isaac Newton, his, Principia Mathematica. And below him is Sir Francis Bacon, one of my favorite breakfast foods. And he comes up with what we know as the 5-step scientific method. You're going to ask a question. You're going to have your hypothesis. Then you're going to do a little bit of research, refine that hypothesis, or in our world, your thesis statement. Then you're going to run an experiment. You're going to do a test. You're going to find out where you were right and kind of where you were incorrect and what the causes of that are. And you're going to come to a conclusion, look at the results. Then you're going to go back and you're going to retest it to see if you can further prove it or correct your mistakes. And you're going to find the results. And the scientific method still works to this very day. It's a way for science to explain some of these things. And Galileo gets in trouble. Matter of fact, he is called before a tribunal, and they make him swear that the church is correct under pain of excommunication. And he legendarily is supposed to have said, yes, you are right. And as he was leaving under his breath, it goes, but yes, the earth does move. So anyway, so what we know as the sun revolves around the earth, or the earth revolves around the sun, is actually different planets orbiting the sun. We knew that a long time ago. The ancients in China and Egypt and even the Mayas knew this, but hey, in the European world, not so much. And then we get Nicholas Copernicus, who will finally reinstate and prove the heliocentric theory of the universe, that the planets do revolve around the sun. Tycho Brahe will build one of the world's first telescopic observatories. He will invite people to come and take a look, and he proves that Copernicus is correct. And last but not least, we have René Descartes, French guy. And he emphasizes human reason. He's like, what separates humans from other mammals and animals is our ability to reason, our ability to problem solve, to do Bacon's 5-step scientific method. This didn't work, it came close, so I'm going to tweak it a little bit, and I am going to try it again. And he provides the basic truths of learning, of using what we always have done, but no one wrote it down, the trial and error method. Try new things. See if it works. And I like to put him at the end because back, if you remember, looking at Michelangelo's The Statue of David, and I told you his head and his hands were bigger in proportion to anything else. Well, that was because he said humans have the ability to think, form a plan, and then put it into action. And so René Descartes comes up with the phrase, I think, therefore I am. I'm a human being. I can think, I can reason, I can process, I can problem solve. So here I am. Yes, I may, God may have created us, the divine spark, but he gives me the ability to reason and think and make my own choices. So that's the Reformation. Good luck, guys. Okay, I thought that this had just run out of battery, but it didn't. So anyway, all right. That's it, guys. I'll hopefully see you tomorrow.